Ooh, I was the 8th person for once. Fancy that. Alright, Arena Decathalon Finals. What do we have? We have Liliana, Tainted Adversary, Primal Command, Brutal Cathar, Swords to Plowshares, that's probably the pick. Dread Wanderer, Insult, Nightpack Ambusher, Sawtusk Demolisher, Land, Charted Course, Grey Merchant, Jaspera Sentinel, and Faceless Agent. Well, I want to be in white, if I can force that, and Swords to Plowshares is just by a pretty wide margin better than every other card in this pack, and is flexible, because even if we don't end up in aggro, it still just goes in every deck playing white. So that's the pick. Howdy, Mark Bro. From Argentina. Nice to hear. It really is amusing how much better Swords to Plowshares is than like 99% of the cards in the cube. Ambusher Flash deck with a Reclamation. I want to draft like a first pick Reclamation deck one of these times. Although I don't know if I'm going to do that many more arena drafts after this event is over, come to think of it. But the idea of first picking Reclamation and then forcing it sounds so appealing. The trouble is that outside of first picking it, it's really hard to get enough instants in this cube that are strong to justify playing it. So we immediately have, like, no good white cards! Cool! I could take Grim Lavamancer and try to go Boros. If we want to go aggro, that is a valid route. Felidar Retreat is not very good in aggro. I guess I could take Ranger Class. That's like theoretically the best aggressive card. I have no clue how to make green-white work. I think Ranger Class is still probably... It's either Ranger Class or Grim Lavamancer. They're the two strongest cards. I feel more comfortable drafting red-white, so that's where I'm going to go. But I could see that going either way. Here... Alright, we get Usher the Fallen, which is a card I want if I'm going to be in Boros aggro. There's no good red cards, and Sword to Plowshares is still our best card. Remorseful Cleric, I think, is a playable white aggro card, but worse than Usher. So we take the Usher. Dryad is good if I wanted to end up in a mid-range deck, but I would rather try to force an aggressive deck than a mid-range deck until I get forced out of that. Here we have a choice between Sarkhan or Sword of Body and Mind. Sword is kind of like giving a creature Infect 5, and Sarkhan is a good 5-drop, but I don't really want to be playing 5-drops in aggressive decks. I mean, Sword is also sort of a 5-drop, and it's probably a better 5-drop. So, I'm comfortable picking that. Mana Tithe is filler. I'm not really excited to play it. Everything else is bad, so I think we're taking Scrapheap Scrounger here. It is a colorless 2-mana 3/2, which is a fine attacker, and if we end up picking the fixing to occasionally accidentally use the ability, that's all upside. We are very much a swords deck so far, come to think of it, aren't we? By a long shot, our two best cards are swords. Okay, Weaponize the Monsters isn't stellar in this deck, but Lightning Helix I think I'm just happy to have. We haven't picked up any unplayable cards yet, but the packs have seemed kind of thin on playables, which is a little concerning. Lightning Axe does not hit players, no. We are going to wheel nothing from this pack. There's Isamaru and Seasoned Pyromancer. Both are decent cards, especially if we end up in a position... Or Seasoned Pyromancer is good if we end up in a position where we don't have a ton of stuff more expensive than 3. Mechagodzilla's also totally fine. Clifftop Retreat is not fixing that I like for these Boros aggro decks because it comes into play tapped on turn 1 and doesn't help you play your 1-drops, but I think I'm going to aggressively pick the fixing here. I think that has a better chance of pushing people out of our colors than taking a decently playable 3-drop red card. Plus, something about Seasoned Pyromancer seems to make it never actually behave for me. Okay, Bomat Courier is a really good sign that nobody is in red aggro. Because every other person has seen this pack and decided they didn't want a colorless, aggressive, good red card. I'm encouraged. This was our pack. We didn't wheel anything that's relevant because there wasn't anything relevant. We'll take the Faceless Agent and hope desperately that we don't need to play it. Currently, I guess it just gets a random creature, which is not good. The good news is, so far, we are not, other than Faceless Haven, we are not playing any cards that are weak, which is a decent spot to be going through the first half of the first pack, in terms of implying that I think we're in a somewhat open color pair. But you can also be in an open color pair where neither of the colors is individually open, and that can lead to problems. I really don't like playing Dragon's Rage Channeler. I feel like I have gotten trapped by that so many times in the past, and it so rarely ever works out. But I do already have 3 artifact creatures. The thing is that I just play so many creatures that it's hard to trigger the cast. No, I'll take Dragon's Rage Channeler over Unholy Heat, but I really want to end up in a position where I'm not playing Dragon's Rage Channelers. These cards are all bad. I don't think there's any way I ever play Golden Egg to enable Delirium, and I really want to abandon Delirium as fast as possible, but I will take the Steam Vents on the off chance that's the 3rd color we wind up in for whatever reason. I'll take a Crash Through and hate it. I'll take a Lightning Axe, and that might actually be interesting, but hopefully we don't play it. Mizzix's Mastery. Mizzix's Mastery going last pick says a lot about red on the whole being open, I think. Now, in this pack, we have a red-white land that we like. We have Play with Fire that I do like. I didn't know Sarah's Emissary was in this set. I think I'm supposed to take Cave of the Frost Dragon. I feel like aggressive decks having access to creature lands as an upgrade over basics is a really big upgrade to the consistency of the decks. So I would prefer to wheel Needleverge Pathway for fixing. Failing that, Play with Fire is a card that I think makes it into our deck, but I think Cave of the Frost Dragon makes our average deck the best. Wow! What a stacked pack! History of Benalia is stellar, but requires our fixing to be very on point. But it is probably the most individually powerful white card. Den of the Bugbear has everything that I just said about upgrading basics into creature lands being huge for these kind of decks. I think I gotta take History of Benalia. Scorching Dragonfire and Esper Sentinel are also both reasonable. We will wheel something good out of this pack, but I'm hoping it's Den of the Bugbear. I think that's the best card for us by a long shot, and then probably Esper Sentinel and then Scorching Dragonfire after it. But this pick is History. That's a Time Warp. Fancy stuff. But other than that, there's not anything really. We can't play a 6-drop. Although, like, maybe there's a world in which Chandra is a playable sideboard card. I don't want to play Faithless Looting. Although, I guess it synergizes with Dragon's Rage Channeler, but that sounds like it sucks. I'm not willing to deny a Time Warp. Taking a hate draft this early, I think, is a lot less valuable than trying to put someone next to us into blue. Get them out of our color pair more effectively. I think I take Faithless Looting for my sideboard, but I really, 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 really don't want to play it. So here's hoping. Again, not really anything super excellent for our deck. A Braid is tempting. As is Perforos' Intervention. It's a mana sink. It's a form of removal spell. It's a sorcery for Dragon's Rage Channeler. Does that make it slightly better than a Braid just being better tempo? I guess Cast Out actually also can cycle for Dragon's Rage Channeler. I know I'm not going to give Dragon's Rage Channeler too much consideration here. I feel like that is almost certainly just a trap. Oh, these are a lot of packs with a lot of cards, none of which are playable for us. I think Ruin Blaster's kind of awful. I think every card in this pack is kind of awful. The only saving grace might be that we possibly have enough artifacts to make Karn not terrible if I immediately minus it for 2. I really don't want to play Karn, but I also really don't want to play Ruin Blaster. I'd rather play Ruin Blaster, though. Okay, here are some actually good cards. Not that they're actually stellar, though, which is unfortunate. Macaeus is a reasonable 2-drop, but not an excellent one. Raidane probably is the pick. Just to throw mid-range decks off. It's not very good at being aggressive. I'm worried about the number of playables I have, otherwise I'd pick this Godless Shrine for Scrapheap Scrounger. Maybe that is the best move? I'm going to take the Raidane, because I still don't actually want to play this Faceless Agent anyway. Can I afford to play a Crawling Barrens in a deck with this many 1-drops? No. No, I can't. I can, however, possibly play Goblin Dark Dwellers in this deck. We have Lightning Helix, Swords to Plowshares, and Lightning Axe so far. It's feasible. Ooh. Experimental Frenzy and Rampaging Ferocidon are both excellent. Both of those cards are so much better than so many of all of the cards we've seen in the last couple of packs. I think I would rather pick up a Frenzy than a Ferocidon, given where my curve is at. I'm happy to have a play with Fire. Banefire looks super tempting, but low-cost ways to enable all of the early creatures we have to attack through opposing early creatures is a big deal. It also plays nicely with Experimental Frenzy. Wow, alright, we wielded into the Bugbear. That is a super good sign. I'm excited currently. So it looks like we are in an open color combination. There's just been a lot of packs that were completely devoid of our cards, I think. I have a really hard time believing that anybody else is in red aggressive decks if Den of the Bugbear didn't get taken. I'm not convinced Lithoform Engine is even good in any deck at all, ramp or not. Is that card playable? Okay, cool. We also wield the Godless Shrine for our Scrapheap Scrounger. That's nice. Oh, do we think we can wheel as Viashino Pyromancer? Because I want to take Heroic Reinforcements. We're fairly convinced nobody's in red-white, but of these two cards, Heroic Reinforcements is the one I'm less willing to risk not getting to pick up. If we end up in a situation where Viashino Pyromancer is taken, we could still get Bone Splitter or Angel Invention, both of which are playable. We can probably wheel Reinforcements. I'm just too risk-averse to take that gamble. But yes, I agree we probably can. Happy to take Pillar of Flame. Hoping we wield the Blood Crypt. I would like a little more in the way of 2 and 3 drop spells that are a little more oomphy. But this is looking reasonable. We are not approaching Mizzix's Mastery Mass, no, because there is no possible way we are getting to 8 mana at any point ever. This is looking like a 16-land deck. And if we end up cutting the Goblin Dark Dwellers, we might go down to 15? No, I doubt that. We have 4 drops. Luminarch Aspirant and Shepherd of the Flock are both interesting 2 drops. I'm going to wheel one of them. I can't not take the Inspiring Vantage in a deck that so badly wants to fix its 1 drops, I think. And I think we prefer the Luminarch Aspirant, but I would accept either one at this point. I don't think we would particularly care about the other dual land because it doesn't come into play untapped until turn 3. Interesting. And so another land that comes into play tapped on turn 1, even if it's dual land, is kind of concerning. I don't like Fight with Fire. I do like Devil's Play a lot. I think that card's reasonable. But Ambitious Farmhand is pretty tempting. I think that's probably what I take. We could use more creatures, although it's not really a good aggressive creature, but currently with 4 and 5 drops, we have use for getting a land. None of these cards are playable. I guess I'm happy to take Cleansing Nova. There is theoretically a world where we sideboard into Cleansing Nova. Yeah, we can play Glorybringer. That's not unreasonable if we're on 16 lands. It's probably better than Goblin Dark Dwellers anyway. So we have 21 cards currently. We would prefer 3 more playables. Worst case scenario, I can play Faceless Agent. So we would only need 2 more playables. How do we feel about Thalia in this list? Makes Dark Dwellers, Frenzy, Heroic Reinforcements, History, and Sword cost more? I think I need to play Phoenix of Ash over that. I do want some good 2-drops, but it is not the 2-drop I want. Pride of the Conquerors is a playable 2-drop. I do agree that Phoenix seems pretty decent. Hall of Oracles. That is sort of interesting. But Mazemind Tome is also something I could theoretically bring in against other aggro decks. And I think Hall of Oracles having a mana base cost is something that has me nervous. I'll draft a Blood Crypt for the Scrap Heap Scrounger. We wield neither of the good white 2-drops. I suppose that's not surprising. Other than us getting a kind of late History of Benalia, probably because the person we're passing to is in white. I think the person passing into us here is in white, as evidenced by how much of our deck is now composed of red cards. In fact, there might be a player who's mostly mono-white splashing red, because I don't think we wield that other red-white land. Whew. Okay, so how did we do on playables? Did we end up at exactly the right number of playables? So we are looking at 9 turn 1 red sources, 8 turn 1 white sources, No, because I have to cut one of these lands. I could... If I wanted to run 17 lands, which I don't want to do, what would we cut? Probably Lightning Axe? I think we're... Well, maybe Ruin Blaster, actually. Ruin Blaster is probably the least interesting card in this deck. Although cutting the 4-drop to play 17 lands does feel awkward. Crash Through? Well, we could cut Crash Through to play 17. I feel like I'd rather play 16 with Crash Through, though. Like, it's not good, but it is a sorcery. Does that matter? I just have a really low impression of Goblin Ruin Blaster. Do we really want Pride? I don't think Pride is bad. Like, yes, we're unlikely to have City's Blessing, but 2-mana punt the team when we have this many low-cost creatures, history, and heroic reinforcements. I feel like it will probably have utility. I always think if I'm torn between 16 and 17, 17 and play 41 cards is okay. So the reason that logic doesn't work, in my opinion, is that playing 17 and 41 makes us less likely to draw History of Benalia. And regardless of whether we play 16 lands or 17 lands, in every combination of 17 and 41, or anything, we're less likely to draw History of Benalia on turn 3, right? I do agree that 16 with this curve is probably better. Although, I'm a little nervous about our white sources for History of Benalia on curve if I cut a white source, and I'm nervous about our ability to play... I guess I only really have 2 1-drops that need to be played on curve for red, huh? I could do 8 and 8. History of Benalia into Heroic Reinforcements is, in fact, a standard playable combo, yes. Yeah. History of Benalia and Heroic Reinforcements was a standard deck at one point, I think. I recall that being a thing people did. Maybe I'm crazy, but I don't think it was good, because there was a mono-red deck at the time that was a little more popular, and if I recall correctly, a blue-white tempo deck that was also more popular. I think I'd rather play 17 and cut the Crash Through. 17 lands is a little much for this kind of a deck, but if we're going to play 5-drops... Yeah, I think so. My life would be a lot easier if I just had more dual lands, though. Ooh, come on, game. I guess I could play Faithless Looting. Maybe? I do agree that 16 is mostly better. I do agree with that. I might be overrating the need for 1-drops. So I think in that case I wind up cutting a mountain. Card we're bringing in for that is either Crash Through or Faithless Looting. Ironically, I like Faithless Looting more with 17 lands and less with 16 lands. I'm just so not convinced that Crash Through is actually good. I guess I could play Faceless Haven? Or Agent? Is that okay? I can't help but feel like there's probably not a terribly large number of situations where Faceless Haven is going to make me happier than a land. In the dark, does this just tutor up a human? Yeah, almost certainly 100% of the time. So we have 4 humans. Yes. So it either tutors a Channeler, a Lavamancer, a Farmhand, or a Shield Breaker. None of those are great. Does Tome seem more exciting than Ruin Blaster? That's probably true. It's slow. Can we afford slow? I guess we can afford slow when we have Experimental Frenzy, which does really reward us for getting there. If I have Tome, do I want more lands? So I'm still at 16 right now, and I would need to figure out something to bring in. I mean, I guess I could still play the Ruin Blaster on 16. Yeah, it's true that Tome is good with Frenzy. Bomat does not get the job done often? Oh, I totally disagree. Bomat is, in my opinion, by a wide margin our best one-drop. All Bomat needs to do is draw like 2 cards, and it's stellar. Ruin Blaster does punish greedy decks. This is true. It's also a 2-1 with haste. Can't knock haste. I really don't want to run 16 lands, but I also really don't want to run 17. I think we're going to ship this and submit it. I'm reasonably confident in this. I wish I had better mana, and I wish I had better playables, as is always the case, but I'm mostly happy with where this ended up.